Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan. Welcome to Alan's Music Room, where tonight we are going to be talking all things Rush. One of my absolute favorite bands. Been a fan since 78-ish, around that time. I've got a very special guest who's going to be joining me. First of all, I want to tell you very quickly about some upcoming shows. Next week, I've got a subject that I'm really excited about. One of the best jobs I ever had in my whole life is working at a record store. So I've got a panel of guests, 5 of us, who are going to be talking about the glory days of record stores. It's all people who have worked in record stores throughout the 70s and 80s for various companies in various parts of the country. And we're just going to come on and we're going to share stories and get your questions. And it's going to be really awesome. I'm super excited about it. The following week, May 23rd, I've got my second interview with blues guitarist Hughes Taylor. We had him on a few weeks ago, and the conversation went so well that we didn't get to everything we wanted to talk about. So we're going to have him back on, and we're going to finish our discussion with him. And then the third week out, May 30th, we will be talking about the history of Saturday Night Live musical guests. We will have just had the season finale. So we're going to talk about favorite performances, worst performances, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be lots of fun. But tonight, as I mentioned, I've got a very special guest tonight who's going to help me talk about Rush. And I want you to welcome Vicki Hudson, who is the lead singer of the local Rush tribute band, Spirit of Rush. Vicki, how are you?
Hey, Alan, I am great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So glad to see you.
Me too. Hey, we're going to talk Rush. How much better does it get?
I mean, I see that you are appropriately dressed for the occasion.
Of course.
When aren't you wearing a Rush shirt?
I guess when I'm working.
When you're at work. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But even then, I often have Rush-related things in my slide presentations and, so.
Right. Okay. I want to start off with, and partly because I think this is a story that I haven't heard yet, and I may haven't forgotten it, but I want to know your Rush origin story. How did Rush come into your life, and what was it about them that grabbed you the way that it did?
What a glorious day. So it was many years ago. I guess I was about 13 or 14. I can't remember exactly, but I was living in LA where I grew up, and I went to a friend's house one day and his parents weren't home. So it was like he had all the teenagers kind of gathered there and they were all in different rooms. So some were watching TV, some were listening to music, some were eating pizza, whatever. And I was walking from the living room to the kitchen and I heard something amazing streaming out of the bedroom of the house. And I heard this science like nature must also be tamed, And
Oh, that's a heck of an introduction.
yeah, and it was that segment of the song Natural Science. And I like skidded to a halt in my tracks and I was like, what is this music? And I went in the bedroom and I asked the guy and he's like, oh, this is Natural Science by Rush. And I was like, well, can I borrow that cassette? And he said, sure. And I never gave it back to him. I think I still have it. That guy's probably mad at me, but that's okay.
Wow. So you're basically a thief.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I stole for Rush, and that's a good cause. So
I suppose they would think
yeah,
so,
I'm like the
because
Robin
that
Hood
guy
of Rush.
he probably went out and bought another copy. So that's one more sale for them.
Exactly. That's right.
You
And
know, it's
that was
funny.
it. I mean, that was it for me. I listened to the rest of
Mhm.
the Permanent Waves album, and it was like, what is this? I mean, it was just shockingly good.
Mhm.
And yeah, it just hit me right in the heart. I don't know. Hard to explain.
I'll tell you, for me, it was more reactionary. I had been this is going back to like 78. I was a Kiss fan for a while. And, I was at that age where you don't want to hear the music that your parents listen to. And especially like, car rides to church or whatever, and they're playing country or whatever it is. And you want to find your own musical identity. And so I came upon Kiss, and of course my family hated it, which made it all the better. But they quickly got used to it. Like 2 Christmases later, like every Christmas present I get is something Kiss related, and it's just not the same when your family has adopted, like gotten used to what you saw as sort of like rebellious or whatever.
That's
So
interesting.
I had a friend, and I don't even remember how it came up, how I, heard about it or whatever. But a friend loaned me a copy of Fly By Night, the album Fly By Night, and I was like, okay, well that's whatever. I'll take it home and listen to it, and it blew me away. I had never heard anything like it. And the most important part was the rest of my family hated it. So I was like, well, this is my new favorite.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic.
yeah, and a little while later, 6 months or a year or whatever, somebody loaned me 2112, and that
Oh, yeah,
just
that's just it,
consumed
right?
me.
Yeah.
So this is like around 79. So the first album that I bought as a new album was Permanent Waves.
Mm,
And that album just bowled me over. Like
yeah,
there's something really special about it.
truly.
So what do you think is the special thing about Rush? What do you think it is that makes them unique, that sets them apart from anything else that happens in music?
I have been asked this question before, and I've tried to come up with a good answer. And I think I've given responses like, the lyrics are obviously very substantial and very deep. So that's something kind of different in the world of rock and roll. Uh, Obviously, the friendship between the three of them and the collaboration is unique. But here's a more philosophical answer that I've come up with recently. uh, Somebody asked me recently, what is it about Alex Lifeson? Because Alex Lifeson's like my musical hero of all time, and I was sort of at a loss for words because, like, where do you start? Where do you
Hmm.
start to answer that question?
Yeah.
But then about 3 days later, I was kind of sitting around listening to Rush, and an answer came to me that I think that each of us has sort of a frequency that our soul kind of tunes into musically. And for me, Alex's guitar sound in particular, but Rush as a whole just hits right on that frequency.
Wow.
And I know that sounds sort of pie in the sky, but that's I don't know. There's and I think that they play and write lyrics that are universal enough that that happens to a lot of people, that it kind of, hits right on that frequency of understanding the human condition. I mean, so many things Neil Peart wrote about were things that anyone can relate to, particularly people who
Hmm.
are struggling or feel outcast in some way. So there's that universality that, certainly appeals. But then beyond that, I mean, come on, let's face it, the butt-kicking musicianship of all three of these guys, I mean, you know,
Right.
it's kind of at a level that few bands achieve.
Yeah.
So I think all of that combined, makes them the greatest band in the world.
Hmm. I was listening to a show on Sirius XM very recently on channel 106, which is the talk radio, all about music kind of thing. And one of the shows on there is called Debatable.
Mm.
And one of the girls who's part of their crew, um, she's they were asking her, she's kind of a younger person, what is your impression of different, people who listen to only one thing and don't deviate from that genre, from that artist, whatever, she finds very limited, very limiting, very narrow-minded. And so they just threw out different things at her. So, if someone only likes Garth Brooks, what do you have to say about them? And she would come up with some snarky thing about it. And they went through metal and they went through all kinds of things. And then they said, well, what about the people who only listen to Rush? And she goes, oh, no, that's totally different. If somebody listens to Rush, that means they're highly intelligent. That means they're usually emotionally stable. They are very analytical. And she just went on this, nice tirade.
Yes.
And what I'm made me think of is that Rush fans do tend to be very analytical. We aren't the kind of people who like listen casually to music, but particularly Rush music. You study what they're doing. You figure out the time signatures. You know what keys everything is in. You know what the lyrics are and what the lyrics mean and what Neil wrote, what he meant when he wrote them. But I want to say that you and your bandmates as a Rush tribute band have to be analytical on a level far beyond us mere mortals. So I'm really curious to know what it's like to delve into Rush music at that level,
Yeah. Oh,
and what have you learned new from your studies?
oh my gosh. So I thought I knew Rush music before I
Yeah.
joined Spirit of Rush. And I remember the first time that I really had to prepare for, like, I think our first show was a shorter set. It was like 45 minutes because we were joining another group of bands at a jam session or something. This is really early on. So 7.5 years ago, I guess. And so I'm preparing for this 45-minute set. And I had been a Rush fan since I was 14. And at that point, I was like 42 or something. So this is a long time I've been listening to this music. And I've been singing along with these songs since the beginning. And yet, when you have to carry the song, you realize so many things. I mean, number one, you realize the complexity of it because it's easy to sing along with the CD. So I'll give you an example. The song Driven. That's a song I'd always, sang along with. And it was fine. It seemed easy. It kind of feels that way to the ear. But when we had to learn it as a band, it sucked for like 5 months because it is so complicated. And when you really break down the type signature as the vocalist, I have to carry that and I have to know when to come in, when to stop, when to come back in. You realize the depth of what they created and how they made the complex seem graceful and simple and effortless. And so Driven, it's a great example because it's kind of got that riff in the beginning, the da 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 da, and then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 twice in the beginning, and then it goes to 3, and then 4, and then 3, and then 4. I mean, it's like, you know. So I think I recognized just that level of complexity made graceful, if you could say something like that. And then diving into the lyrics as a vocalist, I think Geddy has said this many times that he really needed to feel uh, the emotional content, I guess, behind what Neil was trying to say to really sing the song properly. And so he and Neil used to have a lot of discussions around that. And I found the same thing that um, I can't sing a song that I don't like. Now, luckily, there's no Rush song I don't like. I love them all from A to Z. So that makes my job easier. But it helped me to really dive into the emotional content. So an example would be the story of 2112. When I'm singing that, I think about the characters and kind of what they're going through, and what the main character is experiencing when the priests of Syrinx are telling him, like, yeah, this is all pointless. And, I try to feel it in the heart. And so it's given me just new dimensions by which to look at these songs. And I didn't think I could appreciate them any more than I do or did before, but I do. I think you're on mute, Alan.
I do that all the time.
It's
I mute
okay.
myself so that when I swig water, I don't make noise
Right.
over the guest, and then I forgot to unmute. Anyway, so when you were starting out, did you start as a guitarist, and not with Spirit of Rush, but just as you as a musician? Did you start out as a guitarist or a vocalist?
I started out as, I guess, kind of both, but I would say more of a guitarist.
Hmm.
So when I turned 40, I decided to take up music again after kind of a long absence. And I was really interested in pursuing electric guitar. I'd played before, but I really wanted to take more lessons and get more serious about it. And so I started taking more lessons and going to some open mics. And I was mainly playing lead guitar, but I was also singing. So I was basically doing Geddy's vocals and Alex's lead parts at the same time, which
Hmm.
proved quite difficult. But I had this fabulous jam group that I played with for years, that I still play with from time to time. And they really supported me. And I really wanted to learn Rush songs so much because, it was like so motivating. Because when I met Alex Lifeson, I had the good fortune of meeting him a couple of times. And I wrote him a letter saying that, when I was learning guitar, or when I was really seriously studying guitar, I never had to be pushed to practice because all I had to do was think about some of his pieces that I wanted to learn, and it was just instant motivation because they're so creative. This is what I love about him as a guitarist.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I really started out focusing on guitar, and I learned Passage to Bangkok was my first Rush song that I learned, including the solo. And then I kind of moved on from there and learned Spirit of Radio and Limelight and some other tunes, and then played them all around town in different like little clubs, and that's where I met my bandmates. So it turned out to be fortuitous. But yeah, I was singing and playing the lead parts at the same time, and that was kind of unsustainable. I mean, it was fun to do it for like a couple years, but then I was like, wow, this is really hard, and I want to kind of pick one or the other to focus on. And once I met Reese, our guitarist, I was like, okay, he can, he's far better than I'll ever be, so I'll focus on singing.
So there's a couple of things that I want to jump to from here, since you bring up your bandmates. First of all, and this is something that I've asked you before, but for our show tonight, did Spirit of Rush, when you first started out, did you ever get any flack for being a 4-piece instead of a 3-piece, for not being true to the original formation?
I would say very little. I would say what we got more of was skepticism. And I think that skepticism originated from a lot of things, not just the fact that we were a 4-piece, but the fact that I'm a woman, female vocalist, the fact that Reese was like 13 when we first started playing, the fact that we had, we spanned the age groups, we just sort of looked like this ragtag team of people. And so I think when we showed up at a lot of venues, you had folks that were just sort of like, really? And I think people are skeptical of Rush tribute bands in general because, let's face it,
it's a much different matter than tributing pretty much any other band.
True. And I understand their skepticism. And so the way I looked at it is I tried not to take it too personally, and I would just make it a mission to win them over. And usually those same people who were like looking like, really? At the beginning, like 3 songs in, they were up with their cell phones and kind of freaking out, and they became some of our most loyal fans. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. And nowadays, I think there's more Rush tribute bands out there, which is great. And they take so many different forms. So I don't think there's too many people who are like really purist about it because they recognize that only Rush can really be Rush.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see having to be a 6-piece to really cover everything that they do as 3 people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't understand to this day. I mean, we've been together almost 8 years and we still don't understand how they do what they do because, just the equipment changes alone.
Yeah.
And of course they have a lot of help, like with, staff that kind of help out triggering things and all that. But I mean, it just makes me admire them even more. And it definitely takes 4 of us to do what they can do with 3.
Right. So here's my follow-up question to that is, and this is something that I've said to you before, but of course, when I said it, it was on stage in front of a crowd of people. You are in kind of a unique position in this band because you're singing. So you describe yourself on stage as, I'm one half of your Geddy Lee for this evening.
Right.
Which I think is hilarious. But you're singing lyrics that Neil Peart wrote. And on occasion, in some of the songs, you are playing rhythm guitar parts. So you're bringing some of Alex Lifeson to the song too. So you really sort of get a chance to evoke all 3 of these guys. That's kind of special. I mean,
it is.
I mean, so what do you see? Not necessarily your role in the band, but your role as a representative of what Rush accomplished.
Wow,
I know that's a biggie.
Yeah, but that's really neat. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but now that you say it, it's true. I think I am kind of drawing elements of, I think really what it boils down to is 2 things. One is inspiration, that I've been so inspired by all 3 of these guys that I can draw from the fact that they've, they helped me through my teenage years. A lot of Rush fans say they're the soundtrack of their lives, which I think is true for me. And so it's easy in a way to evoke each of them because they've each played a very special role in my life, whether that was meeting Geddy and Alex whether that was becoming doing a lot of travel writing because I had read Neil's travel books and I thought, well, gosh, I have a lot that I would like to say about my travels.
Mm.
Because, like Neil, I've been a lot of places in the world and had that privilege. And so I guess that came naturally, the evoking of all three of them because they've just been such a huge influence on me. And, Alex, I mean, what can I say? He's just like, uh, I don't, it's hard to find words for how much Alex impacts me as a person. But the second part of that, I think, is the connective piece because as a representative, as the front person in the band, I'm kind of there to connect with the audience too.
Hmm.
And I take that role very seriously
Hmm.
but not seriously to the point where it's not fun. I mean, that's the best part for me, I think,
Right.
is just having that chance. I'm a public speaker for a living, so being on a stage is fairly natural for me, but
Yeah.
I love using music to lift people up and bring them together, and we
Hmm.
need that right now. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I love being on stage. I love playing music, and I love seeing people react to it.
Yeah.
It's just one of the greatest experiences you can have.
It is. And I love how you do that because you're behind the drum kit in your band, and yet I still feel that energy from you from back there. So it's, kind of a unique thing that you get to do.
Yeah, well, and if the more they give me a microphone, the more I become the front man of the band
Right.
because I'm just a
Your personality.
I am just a ham when it comes to that kind of thing. um, but talking about, let's go back a little bit to the history of your band, from your very first gig, and the reaction that you got to that. You start doing more gigs, and your audience grows.
Yeah.
Talk about how more people have discovered you throughout your playing in venues throughout Atlanta.
Yeah.
We're gonna the past year. I'm gonna have a separate question, so we're gonna get
Yeah.
to that after this. But I want to know about your in-person growth and how that grassroots movement that's kind of followed you.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like, we honestly have the best fans in the world. I mean, they are so positive and loyal and devoted. And I mean, we got some folks that were at our first show and are still coming to see us practically every time we play.
Hmm.
And I think that what do I owe that? I guess a lot of hard work. I mean, we're very we work very hard to reproduce this music as close to the original as possible with our own spirit, of course. But accuracy and passion are kind of the catchphrase that we use. Um, and I think just paying your dues. I mean, there is something to that. There's something to sort of just going out there and getting a lot of new faces, getting in front of a lot of new faces, and lots of social media exposure. And I try to be sort of connective with people even outside of playing on stage. But our Facebook page is really active. We have an amazing community on there that's constantly interacting with our
Hmm.
posts and videos and things like that. So I guess I sought we sought as a group to create a positive atmosphere that people could come and unite as Rush fans, because it really does, kind of bring people together even in
Hmm.
difficult circumstances, or with differences and all of that. And so we've used that as a platform to
Yeah.
create this energy. Yeah.
Now, I was going to jump into this past year, but since you talk about bringing people together in difficult situations, I want to talk about the two shows that you did right after Neil passed away.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Holy moly is right.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Those were incredible
yeah.
shows.
It was those memories will be with me forever. And it was, I mean, Neil's death was obviously really, really difficult for us. And, I think Casey in particular had to grapple with
Hmm.
such a difficult job, those two shows of playing Neil's parts and all of that. And
Yeah.
but the opportunity to allow people to come together in their grief and sadness and console each other, which I think was, more than half the value of those shows, I think, was just providing the platform or the
Hmm.
forum for people to be sad together and to remember Neil, and and the energy, like you said, in both of those shows was just off the charts.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
And it helped us. I mean, definitely kind of with that healing process, because right after Neil died, I honestly wasn't sure I could pull it off. I was
Sure.
so down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you did something that was incredibly cool, and you gave audience members the opportunity to write a thing. This is what Rush means to me. Just whatever they wanted to say about Rush and about Neil.
Yeah.
And then so people wrote these notes, dropped them uh, a, a thing up front, and you read them out on stage in between songs as like Reese is changing guitars or whatever. You have this downtime and you read these things, and it was so cathartic and it was so unifying
It
and
really
so
was.
comforting in a lot of ways. And I just thought that was incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, that was. And some of the things people wrote, I mean, there's one that I still think about it all the time, because it was like, somebody wrote like, Neil, your spirit will never die because it will live on through every kid that ever picks up a pair of sticks or a pen and notebook.
Right.
You will live on through their hands forever. I mean, just these really like profound
Yeah.
things, and to be able to provide that to people was sort of this gift that I could offer,
Hmm.
if I left nothing else in this world, which I hope that I do. But being able to provide that to people was such a blessing.
I mean, people just like were in tears.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was unbelievable. But
It was.
it was more like happy tears. It was like
Yeah.
it was a celebration
It was.
of his life and his career, and it was just an incredible experience being at those shows.
It was. And I think the first one was tougher than the second, because
Oh
the
man,
first one was like literally the weekend after he died,
yeah,
and it was hard to keep it together.
sure.
But the second one was the following weekend. And
Hmm.
so it was a little bit, and it was during the day, which I think somehow made a difference in the energy. The energy was
Yeah,
lighter or something.
yeah,
And
definitely.
people flew in from other states. I mean, my bandmate from my other band, Overtime Crew, flew in to surprise me from Florida. And it was just, it was so uplifting. And yeah, I'll never forget that as long as I live. And I'm just delighted that you were there.
Um, Getting into this past year in just a second, when you're just playing around Atlanta and you're playing clubs and bars and restaurants or whatever, and are you aware that you're picking up fans in other states? Because you're posting I don't know how much you did in the way of live streaming, but you would post videos after a show, and that stuff gets seen in other places. So you've got these people who, for the Neil shows, are flying in from other states to see you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I started realizing it when people from other countries started commenting on our videos, and then we started getting invitations from people in other states like, "Oh, you should come to, Michigan and play at this place." And of course, we would love to do something like that, but it's not
Right.
so easy to transport all gear and everything. But yeah, so I was starting to become aware of that, but of course COVID has really highlighted in a way the opportunity that we had to reach people from all over the world. And so that's been one of the little hidden gifts and all of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is that, there are literally Rush fans everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's this incredibly unifying force. And I've met so many people that I would consider friends, some really good friends, through this whole journey. I mean, including, of course, my bandmates, who are like family members to me at this point. But even some of our fans have, like yourself and your bandmates, have become, friends of ours. And as a result, I've had the opportunity not only to meet people from different states and different countries, but different points of view.
Yeah.
So I've had conversations, political conversations with people. I've had conversations about music. And so you really get sort of the exposure to difference, which I love, because that's kind of my field of work. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. COVID hits,
Yeah.
and those of us who play in bands, whether it be on a local level or, big bands who tour nationally, everything stops.
Yeah.
We start seeing some things like the Indigo Girls start doing live shows from their living room, that they're live streaming. And Tommy Shaw gets into it where he's playing a song from his living room every Friday night or whatever. Paul Stanley does some stuff. But you guys really embraced the live streaming full concert situation. And you've had some like surprising feedback from that, from
Yeah.
like literally around the globe.
Literally. Yeah.
I mean, Scotland and
Yeah. Brazil,
South America.
Paris.
It's
Yeah. It's
insane
amazing.
the reach that you have had with your live stream shows.
Yeah. Agreed. It's incredible. I mean, and I will tell you that, to be just totally frank with your listeners, it really originated out of like the misery that we felt of not playing together, because
Hmm.
it went from like our last live show was at the Vista Room, and you were
Oh
there,
yeah,
right? I mean, that was amazing. It was
that was
sold out,
such a great
you
night.
know, 200 and something people, just packed, lights,
Yeah,
stage, beautiful sound. I mean,
yeah.
it was, the sound quality was just amazing. And we made so many new fans that night. One
Mm,
guy said he was crying because he hadn't really heard Rush in so long, and to hear us reproduce it that,
yeah.
accurately and everything, it just made him cry. And I was like, this is incredible. And we had been invited to play a festival in front of like probably our biggest audience yet, and all of this was kind of this
Oh, I
upward.
didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And, this kind of like upward trajectory that we were on.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, nothing.
yeah.
And besides the gigs, we hang out socially. I
Hmm.
mean, we would do Rush DVD night, we would do pizza night, we hung out together as friends. And so all of a sudden I couldn't even see them without fearing for my life. I have a high risk spouse at home, and so I was like, I had to be very extra cautious during
Yeah.
COVID. And so it was so miserable that after like 3 months of that, I just said, okay, we got to do something, or I'm just going to like, you know, melt down. I mean, I was so sad.
Hmm.
And the band is just such an integral part of my day-to-day life. And all of a sudden it just, was kind of non-existent. So we tried to make up for it by doing Zoom calls and all that. But finally we just said, okay, we got to do something.
Hmm.
And we came up with this idea, and it was so funny because we thought, well, okay, maybe a few people will tune in, we're just going to play from our garage.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll hire a sound guy. We'll have our sound guy, Patrick, who had done sound for us before, do sound so that it sounds really good and everything. But, whatever, it'll mainly just be for us. We thought, oh, we're going to be so happy to play together again. And we were. I mean, we were so thrilled. That first live stream got like 10,000 views within the first week or something. And I thought, okay, clearly we got something here.
Right. Exactly. Um, Before the concerts, though, you did a couple of like Zoom Rush parties
Yeah.
where the band hosted, the fans like dialed in, and you had this big conversation, and you had trivia things, and it was really cool.
It
And
was
that was
so fun.
early on in the
Yeah.
pandemic, and where people are just looking for anything to kind of like, feed their need for, being social, feed their need for music. And
Yeah.
it was so much fun doing those things.
It was. And that was like our way of just trying to, reach out to the fans. And I think too, like, we didn't want them to feel like they were forgotten,
Yeah.
I mean, because it was like we're sitting there unable to play, unable to do anything. And it's like, okay, this is not acceptable to me. We
Yeah.
can't just have this whole community of people. Plus, Neil had just died. And
Right.
so it was like the worst, because
Yeah.
here he's gone. We do these shows. I was scheduled to go to a Rush convention in Toronto. I had the ticket that said YYZ on it.
Right.
And, and then everything hit. And so it really was hard, because just at the time we needed to gather the most, we couldn't. So that's where that sense of creativity came in, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, here's all the stuff we can't do. What can we do?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
And
kind of
it's
where
and
that
it's
came from.
it's flipping the script,
Yeah.
which is something that you talk about in your personal appearances, in your professional life.
Yeah, that's right. I did a blog on flipping the script, that whenever, we get stuck in something, a
Mhm,
mindset that we get mired in,
mhm.
that, what can you do to just flip things around and do the opposite of that, or put and in the middle, like we can do this and we can do that.
Yeah.
We can stay safe and we can bring music to the fans. And so that's kind of where we were coming from with the
Mhm.
live streams. And not that I would wish the pandemic over again. However, what we gained from those, we've done 5 of them so far,
Yeah.
and they're big. I mean, they're a lot of work. They're big productions. It takes us hours and hours to set up beforehand.
Yeah,
Our,
yeah.
our sound engineer in particular is working very, very hard. He's there from, the early afternoon to late at night. Um, and there's always the risk of technical issues and all that. But we have literally reached fans that
Mhm.
there's no way we could have reached otherwise.
Right,
People
right.
from all over, different time zones, different cultures, coming together in Rushdom, which has just been fantastic. And so all those fans, we get to keep them when the pandemic is over.
Right, exactly, that's so true. And each one I've noticed has kind of become a little bit more ambitious, uh,
Yes.
technically and musically, because you've gotten more multi-camera kind of setup. But the last one you did the entire Hemispheres album top to bottom.
Yeah, I don't really know what we were thinking
Unbelievable,
there.
unbelievable.
It was very interesting to pursue that. And we also had a number of other really difficult songs in that set. So that was
Oh,
definitely
yeah,
our most ambitious set to date. And yeah, I guess we like a challenge.
yeah,
And, we wanted to provide something for the fans that would be meaningful.
right.
To do that whole album, and it was certainly a lot of fun to work on, because the side one of Hemispheres is just it's just so brilliant. I mean, you can listen to it 1,000 times. You're like, really? How did they do this?
Mhm,
The time signatures and the
mhm,
lyrics and everything. So it was
yeah.
a lot of fun to work on. But I think I was a little more jittery about this one than maybe some in the past.
I would understand that, because that's a monumental task to take on.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
But
It was fun
it
though.
it turned out brilliantly, so,
Thank you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Afterward, I was like, we did Hemispheres. I
We
can't
did
believe
hemispheres.
that.
Okay, there is, like, at least 850 questions that I could ask you, so we may have to do a part 2. Um,
Absolutely.
I wanna when you're in a tribute band, there's always the, sort of battle between, do we stick to the hits or do we do deep cuts?
Mm,
Now, I think you're in a really enviable position, because Rush audience is a deep cut audience.
yes.
The people who are going to come to your shows, aren't the casual fans who only recognize Spirit of Radio or whatever,
Right.
Free Will, but they want to hear, natural science, and they want to hear something that they wouldn't expect to hear.
Absolutely.
Um, so talk a little bit about that. I wanted to, like, what's off limits for you guys? Is there anything that you wouldn't try?
No.
Like, okay, what about I think I'm going bald?
Yeah, I mean, we would try that. So
Okay, awesome.
here's our philosophy about it. I know that some Rush fans have eras that they don't like, or they're like, oh, there's
Right.
after this it wasn't real Rush or whatever. Um, Fortunately, and that's fine. I mean, there are no rules about what kind of Rush fan you have to be a Rush fan.
Hmm.
But fortunately, the 4 of us are kind of in sync with each other in terms of that we really like the whole catalog. And sure, we have our favorite albums or songs and things like that, but we enjoy the whole catalog. So there's
Yeah.
nothing off limits. The only thing that stops us is just the multitasking, because
Right.
there's certain songs where you'd have to have certain type of gear to pull it off, just because,
Hmm.
a song like, I'm trying to think of an example. there's some stuff off Hold Your Fire that we really would like to do. And we're kind of thinking right now about how to pull it off, because
Mhm.
it's like, well, Ed's saying to me the other day, well, we could record these samples,
Yeah.
program that into Casey's drum pad, get an extra memory card, do the, so
Right.
they're great about the technical side of it, but it just takes a little time to work out. So I would say there's nothing off limits, but some songs just take longer to realize into reality because there's just so many technical limitations.
Right. And I will say that having watched you guys over, I don't know, 6.5 of your 8 years, maybe. I'm trying to remember when it was the first time I saw you guys. It was early on.
Yeah.
Watching not only you guys progress as a band, as musicians, but also progress technologically as you add more equipment and
Hmm.
you're able to do more things with that stuff.
Yeah.
And even a little thing like Casey adding rototoms to his
Yeah.
set
Oh my gosh.
expands the vocabulary that he has to work with, and
Absolutely.
adding some of the electronics, the drum pad and all that stuff to trigger, it's really given you the ability to uh, do more Rush stuff that you wouldn't have been able to do before.
Yeah. So
And
we
it's
did the
exciting to watch it change and grow.
Oh, yay. I know it is for us too. Like we did Grace Under Pressure in its entirety recently, and
Mm,
there's no way we could have done that 5 years ago just because of, gear.
yeah.
And so that has been really fun. We have always said that, we want to be, we want it to be, want to preserve the accuracy of it as much as we can, but the quality has to come first.
Yeah.
So if it's a matter of like, okay, we have to hit 25 things and we think it's going to degrade the quality of the song, then we will wait, and
Hmm.
figure out a different way to do it.
Hmm.
And, but as far as your question around how do we decide, one of our rules of thumb is kind of our guidelines, I guess, is when we play a new venue, we tend to stick more to things that are recognizable just to sort of feel out the venue and the audience. But normally
Okay.
we only do that for like one show there. And then all subsequent shows, we kind of just start, you know,
Right. All bets
mixing
are off.
things. All bets are off. And we try to, I would say, mix in every show
Hmm.
more recognizable songs with the deep cuts just to we want there to be something for everyone
Sure.
and not assume that everyone is like diehard, Rush fan. But
Right.
we get a lot of appreciation from the fans for
Hmm.
what we do, which is neat.
Yes, absolutely.
And we do try
Um,
to meet fan requests when we can. It's not always possible because of equipment, but we try.
right, right, right. So my fan request is to, of course, play Clockwork Angels in its entirety.
Right,
I'll let you
exactly.
work on that for a
Yeah,
little while.
absolutely. That'll take some doing, but
Oh, definitely. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about another project that you've had, and that is this fabulous book right here.
oh, fun to see my book cover.
So, this is your second book of poetry,
Yeah,
and this one is inspired by and dedicated to Neil Peart.
yes.
So, tell me about the origin of this book and where people can find it.
So I've been writing poems about, gosh, I guess ever since I was about 7 years old. Like really, when I could first write, I sort of naturally, when I found out what a poem was, I kind of gravitated toward
Mm,
that. And so I've been collecting my poems over the years. And this book was actually written kind of half before Neil died and half after. So it really, his death did affect the tenor of the book and sort of the energy of it. I think in a positive way because it gave me an outlet for my grief and hopefully other fans who read some of the poems I wrote about him maybe felt some connection as well and helped them. Um, yeah, so it's a collection of poems on lots of different subjects. So there is something in there for everybody.
hmm.
I wrote some poems about the Beach Boys that were a big influence growing up because I grew up in LA, Southern California, and so I could definitely relate to their sound. I wrote about some of my travels to Iceland, India, and other parts of the world. But there's a whole section of Rush related poems, and particularly a couple of poems that were dedicated to Neil. And in fact, one poem called Grief was written half
Mm,
before he died and half after. So I finished it after he died.
yeah.
And then I wrote one about him called The Winter Garden, which is a reference to the song Presto. And that's the title of the book. So it's really been an amazing opportunity once again to give people a gift of what's the word? Empathy, I guess, connection,
Mm.
because I knew
Hmm.
there were a lot of fans suffering out there from Neil's death. And to be able to offer them this and some empathy and heart, I guess, is
Yeah.
just a gift to me, something that I enjoy helping people. So,
And where should someone look to find this if they want to buy it?
yeah,
Which
so
I'm sure people will want to buy it.
I hope so. Yeah, it's available at lulu.com. So that's lulu.com, and just search on the Winter Garden. There is another book called, I think, Winter Garden, but that's about like Norwegian plants or something. So you'll know that's not my book.
I did find that when I went searching for it one time.
Yeah,
And I thought, well, I know what your cover art looks like, so I
right.
recognized it. But also, I read the description. I thought that's interesting
That's
and
probably
not
not
a good book.
it.
It's gorgeous cover art.
Thank you. I cannot take any of the credit other than the ideation. So my graphic artist Sheila Shenholster did this artwork, and I gave her the song Presto, and I gave her the song The Garden to listen
Mm,
to, and I gave her the poem about Neil called The Winter Garden. At the time, it was called something else, I think. But anyway, and I just had this imagery around, the icy garden of grief. Over time, as the grief dissipates, it sort of gives way to this lush garden in which things are still alive and still growing. So I thought it was a perfect analogy
mm.
for how we process grief and how we process life.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite section in the book is you have a whole section of very small, very delicate, very compact 3-line poems.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to know your thoughts about those because I'm always interested when artists sort of like corral themselves in, put parameters on yourself that you force yourself to work in. It makes you think differently about your craft. It
Yeah.
makes you, every word that you choose has to have meaning. So tell me about that section, and were those all written at different points, or were they done specifically for that part of the book?
Yeah. So there were several of those in there on different subjects. The ones for Neil all were written after he died. The ones that were like, I think there were seaside ones with the seaside theme. Those were written all at different times, and I think there were holiday ones too that were written at different times. And it's funny because I find those. I absolutely hear what you're saying about restricting yourself gives you a different mindset and all that. But those ones actually are kind of in a way very expansive for me because they're very relaxing. I get to just say what I'm going to say in 2 lines, and that's it.
Mm,
I am done.
nice. Hmm.
And so it's kind of those are the types of poems I write when maybe it's a little difficult to sit and really um, go through the process of a full length poem because it's some of them just flow out. I mean, I wrote a couple the other day that just, in 5 minutes they were out. And some, though, particularly the endings, I'm really particular about how poems end.
Mm,
So
yeah,
sometimes you're really sitting there agonizing over that. But I
yeah.
think when I was so emotional about Neil, writing the full length poem about him was so tough. I mean, it went through several drafts.
Oh, yeah.
But those short ones, it was like it allowed me to express some of the
Mm,
emotions without getting too like overwhelmed by them because I
hmm.
was very overwhelmed by the whole thing. I just couldn't believe that he died. I mean, it was so
Yeah,
shocking.
yeah.
And I think one of the challenges for me was thinking about how Rush, the other 2 members of Rush, must have felt. And I felt terrible about that. And so that's where I was able to express those in those short poems, and just try to capture that emotion in 2 or 3 lines.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Um, Neil was a huge inspiration for me as well, not only as a drummer, but reading his lyrics is what got me interested in writing.
Mm,
And when I was a young kid and I wanted to like start bands and stuff, it was always my goal to be the drummer and the lyricist of the band.
mm,
And that sort of like expanded into me writing all sorts of other things, but my enjoyment of writing really came from Neil.
yeah.
And that whole thing about the drummer doesn't have to be the dumb one of the band.
Right.
You know, the
Yeah.
hyper intellect can also be the drummer. He can bring the ideas to the song. And he was just an incredible, incredible person.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love that you are kind of carrying on that spirit through. You have a book out now too, and just through doing these shows and like some of the other stuff I've seen you do on YouTube around literature and writing, and it's just great. And I've appreciated too how you've really embraced my books, and we've had some good conversations around poetry. But yeah, this is how we carry on the spirit of Neil Peart, right? Because he really was a Renaissance man. I mean, he was an incredible drummer, but he was an incredible writer, and he was a documentarian. I mean, he's done voiceover work. He's done so many things, and I think that's part of how he inspires me to live my life. Is what else can I do?
Yeah.
What else can I accomplish?
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I'm working on my third book now.
I am not surprised by that at all. And that's fantastic. Okay, so going into this, I gave you some topics to do a top 5 list. And you said, well, how about we do the top 5 Alex Lifeson guitar solos?
Yes.
And I said, let's do it.
Which is like so difficult for me, but I tried.
Yeah. So I set myself a parameter, like we were talking about, and I wanted to do anything for myself that's his best solos that aren't free will, that aren't the ones that you always think of, Limelight and those kind of things. So I'm going to go a little deeper with mine. So I'm really curious to know what you have selected.
Okay.
And if you ranked them, what is your number 5? And also for folks who are watching, if you want to drop a comment in or a question, or if you want to give us what your favorite Alex Lifeson guitar solos are, we would love to see those. So what's your number 5 pick?
This was so difficult. It was so difficult for me to rank them, although the top 3 were easier. But for number 5, I chose Anthem. And the reason behind that is it is just such a butt kicker. I mean, for lack of a better word, I'm being very un-Neil Peart-like now by using that language. But the thing that I say to my band when we're about to play Anthem, or I say it to the audience sometimes, is like, this is a song that's like being punched in the face and then run over by a truck in a good way. And that's how that solo feels. I mean, it's just amazing. How about you? What's your number 5?
It was, as you say, tough to put this list together because there are so many different directions you can go with it.
Absolutely.
And one that did not occur to me at first, that when I thought about it, because it's not quite the flashy solo that you think of when you think of Alex. But it's just one that carries so much feeling to me and is so picturesque, and that's Jacob's Ladder.
Wow.
I mean, really, I've done this list before, and I've never thought to put Jacob's Ladder on it.
Great choice.
But it just paints this picture,
Yeah.
of, oh my gosh, it just blows me away every time.
Oh, that's so true. I know. I love listening to Reese play that because I can feel it, like the vibration of it's right there in the room. So
I'm going to tell you here, this is a little aside. When we went to the R40 tour, the last tour that Rush did, they're playing they're playing in Alpharetta.
Yeah.
The afternoon comes up and it's stormy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I hope that the storm clouds lift before the show so we don't get rained on. I'm driving to the venue and the clouds are literally parting and the sky is clearing. And I thought, what if they play Jacob's Ladder tonight?
Wow.
Like, I will die a death if they play Jacob's Ladder tonight. And then they played Jacob's Ladder.
Oh my God.
For like the first time in years that they hadn't played it.
Amazing. That was like the highlight of the show for me.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was my favorite song from R40.
Yeah, mine too.
It was so amazing to watch that being played live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great choice.
Yeah. So let's go to your number 4. What do you got?
I really couldn't decide, so I'm gonna have to do a tie. I mean, I
Well,
know
that's
this is
fine.
supposed to be a top 5, but,
It's okay.
So, I was really torn between Free Will and The Garden, which are, like, at total opposite ends of the
I'm gonna
spectrum.
say that's very different.
Yeah, and the
That's awesome.
reason why is, because of I realized that it's one is external and the other's an internal reason. So Free Will, the reason I chose it is because externally, when we're playing it in the
Yeah.
band, it is so unbelievably thrilling to watch the audience's faces, and
Yeah.
because my band, I will give them all the credit because I don't do anything during that section. They just play it so well. And to feel it in the room, is very
Mhm.
different than just hearing it on a record or something. And so I love hearing that and watching the audience cheer and get excited. The Garden is more of that internal feeling that,
Mhm.
it's one in which Alex's choice of notes just hits me right in the soul, right in the frequency that I think I was born with, born
Mhm.
to hear. So, yeah, those 2
Dude,
tie for my number 4.
that's great. Um,
How about you?
gosh, for my number 4, I think I'm gonna go flashy
Mm.
and, very acrobatic. I'm gonna go with the finale of 2112
Oh my gosh,
because
brilliant.
holy smokes.
Yeah.
I mean, what he does in those couple of minutes is and after you've listened to this entire 20-minute suite of songs
Yeah.
and you get to that moment where it's building to the end and it's just like
I know.
it's such a release.
Oh, it really
Holy
is.
cow, it's just incredible.
What a great choice. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
brilliant.
number 3.
Okay, this was a little easier.
Mhm.
So, number 3 is a motion detector from Power Windows.
Oh, that's one I would not have thought of.
Yeah, that is like, I don't know, it battles with my number 2, but, it's
Wow.
just that solo is so beautifully played for a couple of reasons. One is the tone, just the tone he achieves on that solo. I don't know what the effects are. I'm sure Reese could tell me, but it just sounds gorgeous and uplifting. But it also follows the theme of the song. So it kind of starts out with that more like a little bit melancholy, kind of vulnerable feel, and then
Mhm.
it builds to this sort of more like uh, inspiring, uplifting.
Mm.
And that's kind of what the song does too.
Mhm.
So I feel like it just follows the theme of the song really well.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
All right. Number
my
3.
next one is pure fun.
Love it.
Nothing deep, but
Yeah.
it's a very different approach. It's much more like chord than it is, like a lead line like you would think of, and that's Kid Gloves.
Oh gosh. Yeah. That solo's brilliant.
It's
It's
so
so creative.
it really is, and it's the song itself is so much fun, and that the solo that he does, and it just builds upon that and just lifts the whole song in new and unexpected ways. And I just think it's so, and that's another one that I would not have um, initially thought of, but I saw an article a year or two ago, a couple years ago, something where Alex named his 3 favorite guitar solos, and that was one of them. And I thought
Yeah.
he's correct.
I know.
I would never have thought of that, but when I listened to it and thought about it the way he said it, I'm like, that's absolutely dead on. I mean, that's an incredible solo.
It really is. And that solo encapsulates Alex's creativity and why I love him so much because it's
Yeah,
not just that he's a great player,
yeah,
because he is. He's up there with the best, right?
yeah.
But it's what he comes up with. Like,
Yes.
how did he invent that solo and out of his brain? I mean, all of these solos, like there's so many where,
Hmm.
and not just the solos, but some of the stuff he does under the verses, like in Distant
Yes.
Early Warning, what
Yes.
he's doing under the part where Getty's singing Cruising Under Your Radar, that if you
Hmm.
listen to that, it's just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
He is one of the most inventive
yes,
composers that I
truly.
in rock music.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Whew,
Yeah.
boy. Okay,
No
so
shortage of love for Alex here.
okay, my next one is oh no, your turn. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
number 2, number
Yeah, yeah,
2.
yeah, number 2.
Okay, so this was a little easier. So Between the Wheels, from Grace Under Pressure.
Oh.
And part of the reason is I've always loved the solo because it is absolutely perfectly constructed. It's like the transition from kind of the theme, once again, like a motion detector, he follows the theme of the song.
Mm-hmm.
But then recently, I guess it was last year, during COVID time, Reese taught me how to play the solo. And when I learned it, I was like, oh man, I appreciated it even more because of how beautiful it's constructed. The arpeggios in there,
Mm.
just everything. So learning the whole song and being able to play it was one of my biggest achievements in life. I was just so excited to actually be
Yeah.
playing that song, thanks to
Yeah.
Reese.
That's fantastic. And that's such
Super
a good
fun.
choice. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Okay,
Okay,
number 2 for you.
number 2 is I'm going 100%. It's not flashy. It's not technically difficult like some of the other ones are, but it's pure emotion.
Yeah.
And that's the whole song. It's the main guitar motif and then into the solo, and it's Ghost of a Chance.
Oh, yes. Oh,
That
beautiful
song
choice.
that song pulverizes me every time I listen
Yeah,
to it.
truly.
Oh my gosh, it
Oh
just
my gosh.
bowls me over like a
Yeah,
Mack truck because it's so pure emotion.
truly.
Oh my gosh.
And he did that solo in one take.
Yeah, I know.
And you
And
can
that's why it
feel it.
sounds so emotive and so
Emotive. Yeah,
immediate because it was.
exactly. And
Oh,
that's just what I love about him is that,
yeah.
you watch him play on stage and you see that he is feeling everything.
Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't matter whether it was 20 years ago or 2 years ago,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm getting my math wrong, but the last time they played, 2015 or whatever it was, that feeling was always there,
Yeah.
that emotion. And
Amazing.
that's just, what I love about him.
Okay. The
Okay,
moment has
so
come. The
the
big number
moments,
1.
the big number one.
What
This
is
was
it?
easy because it has been my favorite Rush song almost from day one, and it still is. And that is Mission. And particularly the live version on A
Mhm.
Show of Hands, because on the record, the solo is beautiful, but they fade it out at the end. So
Yeah.
you don't get to hear the full glory of it.
Right.
On the Show of Hands version, and they do it on Snakes and Arrows too, but I just love the Show of Hands version. It just that soaring crescendo, it's in the key of D, I think, and it just at the end, it just hits that high note and it
Uh-huh.
doesn't fade out and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
It is absolutely glorious. And then that song is just, my favorite song of all time ever in
Yeah.
the history of music. So
I absolutely love that song.
yeah, the lyrics are,
Yes.
one of the hardest things about Neil's death was that when I listened to that song, like the first few days after he died, I
Mm.
tried to listen to it and I couldn't. And it made
Yeah.
me cry. And I was like, oh no, am I ever going to hear this song the same way
Yeah.
again? And I
Yeah.
was devastated. And then, of course, over time, it became joyful again. And I was so happy and relieved. Okay, you're number
All
one.
right. All right. So mine is a long one, but I'm going with a very specific moment in it, and that's La Villa Strangiato,
Great
because
choice.
the playing
Oh,
from all three of them throughout that entire 9.5 minute piece
yeah.
is
Insane.
just stellar.
Yeah.
Like some of the best work that any of them have ever done.
Agreed.
But I think possibly my favorite Alex Lifeson moment in the history of Alex Lifeson moments is when it breaks down to that very incredibly quiet 7/8
Yeah.
section,
Yep.
and he comes in with that just delicate and
Yeah.
soft and
Oh,
gorgeous solo that's it's just so powerful
yes.
in its like quietness.
Oh, totally. And then how
Oh,
it builds out of that.
and it goes into the fireworks and
Yeah.
the passion and all
But
that kind of
without the
stuff.
quiet part, it wouldn't have been as effective. And that's
Yeah,
what makes him such a genius is just all of that thoughtful crafting
yeah,
of his solos,
yeah,
I mean, yes, he can play all the flashy fast stuff, but he chooses not to at a lot of points because it fits the song. And that,
yeah.
I absolutely. And if you've seen them do that live, that moment is so powerful in the show because those green lasers would kind of shoot out over him,
Yeah.
and there'd often be like some smoke in the background, and
Hmm.
and then you'd hear that, "Woo,"
Yeah.
and it's just,
And he does that thing with the volume pedal where every note sort of fades in.
yeah,
And he's done that a few in other places, like the intro of actually, the intro of Xanadu should have
Xanadu,
been on
yeah,
my list too. Holy cow.
yeah,
But he does that thing and that part that he plays that wah, 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 wah,
yeah.
wah, 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 it's just so incredibly beautiful.
I know, I agree. Wow, we chose wisely, I
We
think.
did. We came up with some good ones.
We really did, and I could do, like, a whole segment on Alex.
I know.
And, I have this hashtag on my personal Facebook page, like, whatever I post about him, I'm like, hashtag "not ashamed of my hero worship." I got no problem with it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Vicky, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you as always.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun, and happy to come back for part 2.
Sweet.
Yay.
And as I mentioned once before, coming up, we have the 40th anniversary of a Show of Hands. Oh, no,
gosh.
Exit Stage Left. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's
The
right.
40th anniversary of Exit Stage Left is coming up later this year. So I want to put together a show all about Rush's live performances captured on DVD and in person,
Oh,
tours
great.
that we've seen. So I'm definitely inviting you back for that and your
Oh,
bandmates
please.
if they are interested.
Absolutely, please do. I'd be happy to come back. This was so much
Fantastic.
fun. I could talk about Rush all night.
Oh, I mean, come on. Yeah, absolutely. So one more time, tell people where they wait. We have a comment from Mike
Oh,
Boyd.
Mike. Hey, Mike.
I can't believe we went this far with no comments.
I
That's
know.
crazy. People were so enraptured in our discussion that
I know. Well, and it is Mother's Day. Maybe they're having their Mother's Day dinner
I
and
know
they'll
that
watch
is
us
true.
later.
That is true. But one more time, tell people where they can find your book.
Yeah, so it's called The Winter Garden and it's available on lulu.com. So that's lulu.com. And then just search on The Winter Garden or my name and you'll see it.
And don't pick the one about Scandinavian icebergs or
Exactly.
whatever it is.
I mean, unless you're interested in that.
Well,
But
you could be. I mean, this could lead people to a whole new subject of study that they
that's
would never have
right.
thought of.
Whole new hobby for the pandemic.
But once again, thank you so much. And I
Thank
hope
you,
you have
Alan.
a great night. And I can't wait for the next thing that Spirit of Rush does.
Yeah, that's going to be coming up hopefully soon.
Yes, another live stream.
Yes. And
And
hopefully we'll be back out there playing live before too long. I mean, we're
yeah,
just keeping an eye on things.
yes,
We'll probably do an outdoor show. I'd say in the
yes.
nearest future, and then hopefully be back to our venues. We're just kind of keeping an eye. We're following following the science and just kind of seeing where things go. But we're confident we'll get back out there. Hey, Mike. Glad
And
you're with us.
and Eddie wants to know when you're playing out again. Well, we
Yeah,
just found out.
we're not
So
entirely sure,
yeah,
but it shouldn't be.
but
I would wager it wouldn't be too long.
I agree.
Yeah,
Same for us too, Hardisons.
yeah, I can't wait for you
We're
guys to.
planning stuff now, so and I'm just can't wait to get back to
Oh
it.
my gosh, same here.
Oh my gosh, the first shows that we do are
Oh,
just
they're
going
going
to
to be
be like
insane.
the biggest celebration.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's part of why we haven't done it. I mean, because we want to make sure that our not just we're safe, but our fans are safe, and we
yeah,
know that it's going to be like super packed, and we just want to make sure they're safe too.
yeah.
So, but hopefully we'll get back out there soon, and I can't wait to see you guys too.
And people should find the Spirit of Rush on Facebook,
Yes,
the
or
Facebook page.
YouTube.
Yep,
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel also. So
absolutely.
please
And you
subscribe.
especially want to get on both of those things because you want to catch the next live stream concert that you do.
Yes.
Any spoilers for what you might have planned for this next one?
We do have kind of a fun surprise, but I think I'll keep it
Awesome.
that way for a little while.
Oh no, I don't want any. I don't want to know. I want
Yeah.
to be surprised when it happens. But
Yeah,
okay,
it'll be
thank you
fun.
so much, Vicky.
Thank
It's
you,
such a
Alan.
pleasure as always,
Same
and
here.
we will see you around. And for everyone who watched, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next Sunday night for a show all about the glory days of record stores.
Oh, fun.
Yes, I can't wait. So everybody have a lovely night. Be good to each other, spread love, and we will see you very soon.
Bye, everybody.
Uh,
Rush